Hey guys, welcome back to Sparkfin Homestead. My name is Krista and I thought I would turn the camera on today and take you guys along on just little tasks that I have to get done today. I've spent the morning cleaning the kitchen and just kind of cleaning up around the house. We've been gone a lot lately, so my little tiny daily tasks that I normally do really have not been getting done in the last month. So I kind of spent the morning just, going around watering plants, vacuuming, cleaning up windowsills, just all that really basic stuff. But I wanted to turn the camera on and kind of take you through some of the other little things that I do around the house. Plus, I have to get a project done. I have a half a bushel of apples in my fridge that I have been meaning to can up and make apple pie filling. Now, I'd said I wasn't going to show you guys how to do that, but I actually have been trying to research how to make apple pie filling, and surprisingly, there is not a lot of videos on it. So I'm just gonna take you guys along while I make the apple pie filling. I've got some kefir and kombucha I need to get made up. I ordered some canned salmon from Sam's Club because it was really cheap. I actually did a price comparison between Sam's Club and Azure Standard, and Sam's Club was actually really economical to order from. So anyways, I ordered this salmon and then it came today, and look at how it ended up coming. Something must have dropped on the box because all 4 of my cans got severely dented. I also ordered some maple syrup. It is cheaper to order from Sam's Club than Azure. And it came and the lid was all smashed also. So I called Sam's Club. They are sending me out some more canned salmon because I was hoping to have this stocked up on my shelf. This is 100% Alaskan salmons. I purchased this and I think it was $13 for 4 of them. But I really wanted to have it on my shelf because I love salmon burgers. Like, I really love salmon burgers. So I bought these hoping that I would be able to make salmon burgers in the future. Anyways, they're sending me out a new one, so I have to get these cans used up. So tonight I am gonna make some salmon burgers. I need to get some sourdough bread started because I don't have any bread and definitely need to get that started. So yeah, I'm just gonna take you guys along with me today. So I hope you enjoy tagging along today. So the first project that we're going to get started with today is making our water kefir and our kombucha. Today I'm just turning the camera on and just bringing you guys along on my day. I do have a more in-depth detailed video showing you guys step by step how I make my kombucha and water kefir. I will leave it linked for you guys in the video description. Now, typically when I make my water kefir and my kombucha, I can get away with making it once a week, but if it is like really hot in the house, I actually have to make that water kefir at least twice a week, which is fine because when the kids are home from school, my son absolutely loves the water kefir, so we go through it a lot more quicker. But in the winter time, I can usually get away with only making it once a week. So I'm at the once a week point right now, which is really nice. But it is really only a 30-minute process from start to finish to make both of these. I have absolutely simplified it so much since I started making it. Before, I used to boil a huge pot of water and then steep my tea bags in, and I have since learned that I could just steep my tea bags in this tiny little quart-sized jar and then just add it to a big pot, and I don't have to worry about waiting for that water to come down to temperature because you can't add boiling water to your scobies or otherwise it'll kill them. So I've just boiled a little bit of water. I boil about 3.5 cups of water and just add it to 10 tea bags, let it steep for 20 minutes. While it's steeping, I get my water kefir started. One thing also that I have found, I find that as I'm doing things more and more, I find little tiny hacks on how to make it a little bit better. And I think that's what comes along from just practicing and doing it over and over, is you really learn how to simplify the methods. And I watched that video when I first started making these, and I have definitely improved how I make it. And I've just made it work so much easier for me that it honestly does just take 30 minutes of once a week in order for me to make this delicious drink. So this is the water kefir here. What I've done to kind of simplify the water kefir is, instead of using fresh fruit, I mean, I definitely still like to use fresh fruit if it is in season, especially like berry season. Water kefir and kombucha made with fresh strawberries and raspberries is so delicious. But right now we are in fall, so we don't have any berries in our area that are in season. So what I'm making this water kefir with is some concentrated grape juice that I made from some Concord grapes that we grew on our property. It is so concentrated, so I just need to use a tiny little bit in this, and I just add it to it, and then I add my water kefir on top of it. Just cap them. Well, I like to wash the bottles also before I put them on the counter, because we do have a lot of fruit flies right now because it is, you know, there's so much produce in our house. So I like to wash them, and I just leave them on the counter to sit for at least 2 to 3 days. After the 2 to 3 days, this is their second ferment that they're starting right now. After that time frame, it is exactly like pop. Steven drinks it, and when I use the grape juice concentrate, he says it tastes exactly like a grape soda. It is so delicious. He actually likes the water kefir more than the kombucha because I brew my kombucha really strong. I love like a strong tasting kombucha taste. So he is not a fan of it. So I pretty much make the water kefir for him and the kombucha for me. So I tend to make them different flavors. In the winter, when it is like flu and cold season, I love to make like a ginger lemon kombucha. I find it tastes really good on a cold winter's day. But right now I am actually just using some strawberry top syrup in my kombucha. This is how I'm brewing my tea bags. I just pour that boiling water over top of the tea bags. Now this is the kombucha here. Those are my scobies in it. One thing that I found to keep my kombucha really good and active is I make sure that I do not have too many scobies in that gallon size jar. If I have a lot of scobies in there, it tends to eat up the sugars in it really quickly, and it doesn't ferment very well on the second ferment. So you really have to make sure that you don't have too many in there. Like I'm looking at that jar right now, and I actually have too many in there. And I went, after I finished recording this, I actually went and removed some of those scobies out of there because I noticed that my kombucha wasn't as fizzy as I would like it to be on the first ferment. If you are brewing kombucha, just kind of keep an eye on that and have an extra SCOBY motel. The SCOBY is that bacteria piece that is actually in that kombucha. Those things that you see floating around right there, they're called SCOBYs. And that is what essentially makes your kombucha. So just make sure that you don't have too many in there, and you should get a good ferment on your first ferment. So I'm just adding some strawberry top syrup. That is something that I made earlier in the season. All I did when it was strawberry season is when I was preserving my strawberries, I don't actually can strawberries. I just pretty much make strawberry jam and just put the strawberries in the freezer for the winter because I love having strawberries in the dead of winter. So I tend to freeze a lot of them during the height of strawberry season. What I made was I made this strawberry simple syrup where I just took the strawberry tops after I finished preserving them, and I just cooked them down with some sugar and just made a strawberry top simple syrup. I do have a video showing you guys how I made that, and again, I will leave that linked for you guys in the video description. Like I do with the water kefir, I like to just rinse my bottles off just so that there's nothing on them that would potentially be attracting fruit flies over there. And that is just some extra kombucha that I had that I didn't drink this week, so I just put it in the fridge so that it didn't over ferment. So this is kind of how I've simplified making the kombucha since I put that original video out. I just like to put it into a big pot with that boiling water. I add 1 cup of sugar to it, and then I come in and add 14 cups of water. I like to add like a room temperature water so that it brings that boiling water temperature down. And then once I stir it and all that sugar is melted, I then put it back into my kombucha jar. I also reserve 2 cups from the previous kombucha batch because that's kind of what activates it and gets it going. And I am the messiest person when it comes to this. I can honestly not pour into this jar. Every single time I make kombucha, I end up making a mess. So I'm just cleaning up my mess from that, just making sure that I wipe around the top of that jar, because again, I don't really want to attract the fruit flies into it, because if I get fruit flies in my kombucha, it can kill that batch. So I tend to be really careful with that. That is my SCOBY motel. So this is where I keep all of my extra SCOBYs. It is a really good idea to have that available because sometimes things happen and you can kill your original SCOBY. So I always like to have backups of them. So I just keep those stored in my pantry closet, just kind of away. And then every once in a while I come and top it up with some fresh sweet tea in there, and then it just kind of keeps those SCOBYs good and active. So what I'm getting started on right now is I am getting some sourdough bread made. I really needed to get some made because we have been gone so much that we just didn't have any bread in the house. So I'm just making up a quick batch. I have a cookbook that I absolutely love for sourdough. It actually taught me how to make my starter, and it is my go-to whenever I need a good sourdough recipe. So I will leave that linked for you guys in the video description. It is a really, really good book. So I'm just mixing everything together, and I'm just gonna leave this on my counter to ferment for a little bit. And then what I tend to do is I like to put my sourdough in the fridge overnight, because my kitchen in the dead of summer, I could not get my loaves to rise, and I realized it was because they were actually over fermenting. So this is pretty late at night right now that I'm actually just making this batch, and I'm just going to do my stretch and folds for the next hour, and then I'm gonna come in and just throw this in my fridge. I actually did not end up making this bread the next day. I waited a couple of days before I actually ended up making the bread. So that's one thing that's really nice about being able to put it in your fridge. We're actually gonna go back to earlier in the day when I was making the apple pie filling. I just kind of skipped ahead a little bit with that sourdough. So you can see there that I am still trying to get around with my broken foot. It is definitely healed a lot. It's been about 3 weeks since I broke my toes and the top part of my foot, and I'm able to actually move around a little bit better without the boot on. I am definitely still taking it easy though, so don't worry, I'm not overdoing it. But it is healing really, really well. So we're gonna get the apples all prepped to make this apple pie filling. I don't have one of those fancy apple peelers, and I really wish I did, because this would make this project and making applesauce so much easier, but I don't. So we're gonna hand peel all of these apples. One thing that I do in order to prevent the apples from browning is I like to add a little bit, about a quarter cup of lemon juice to water, and then I just set my apples in there after I peel them, and this just prevents them from browning. Then I'm going to cut them into quarters and just take that core out of them. Now there's a different couple ways that you can slice your apples for the apple pie filling. I like this particular thickness and this style of cutting. I cut them about ½ an inch thick, maybe 1/8 inch. I'm not really picky on the exact size. They're all different types of sizes. It's just kind of how I cut them. We're gonna get the filling started. Now I realized I did not have, or I thought I did not have a big enough stock pot, and I knew once I added those apples in that it was not gonna fit in my largest stock pot. So I ended up dividing the filling component into 2 different stock pots. I'm gonna leave the recipe for this linked for you guys in the video description, because I went so far off the measurements of the recipe because I had way more apples. I think I ended up canning 30 cups of apples. So the recipe, the way it's written, is not the measurements that I was using. So just to tell you what I did add into those stock pots though, I did add some clear gel. That is what the canning experts recommend to use when canning a pie filling. I also ran out of clear gel halfway through this process, and I actually had to use some ThermoFlow, but that is also a safe thickener recommended. They say that it is not safe to use arrowroot or cornstarch when canning. I guess it clumps up, and clear gel and ThermoFlow tend to not do that. So I was using both of those in there. I also used some sugar, some cinnamon, some nutmeg, some water, and some unsweetened apple juice. The other thing that I actually ended up adding in, I found a video on YouTube, somebody that was canning her apple pie filling, and she says one little secret thing she likes to add to hers is pumpkin pie spice. So I put a little bit in there, and it really did make a huge difference, and it was like really, really good. This was amazing apple pie filling. So once you have all those components, you see here I changed the pot. I realized I had my big water bath canner. It's not ideal to use this, but I knew once I added those apples in, I needed to have a really big pot. So I actually used my water bath canner, and then I used my pressure canner as a water bath canner, which is perfectly safe to do. I use that to water bath stuff in. The other thing that you see me adding there was some lemon juice. So I'm just gonna bring this to a boil. Once it boils for a minute, I'm gonna add all of my apples in and just stir everything all together. And then I'm gonna let this boil for 1 minute also. Just make sure your apples are all coated. Once that's boiled, just take it off of the heat and then you can safely can it up. So I am gonna can these in quart-sized jars because that is typically what a small pie for us would be. I have heard that if you are doing like a deep dish pie, you're usually gonna use about 2 quarts of apple pie filling, but I just did quarts in here. So you're gonna fill these up. Now, countless recipes and countless videos that I've seen on apple pie filling, all of them said make sure you watch your headspace because clear gel tends to expand when you can it. So what happens is if you can it at the recommended headspace, which is 1 inch, you will usually get siphoning and that can affect the seal. It also, siphoning is just when the stuff comes out of the jar when you're in the process of canning it. So a lot of references that I seen said can and give yourself at least 1.5 inches headspace to make up for that swelling that the apples and the clear gel will do. So I gave myself 1.5 inches headspace, and I totally recommend doing that because it definitely did boil over to the 1 inch headspace. I had no siphoning, so there was nothing in my water, which is an indication. If after you're done canning, your water is really dirty, that means that you've had siphoning, which means that your headspace was off a little bit. So my water was perfectly clear, so I knew that I had good headspace. So what you see me there doing was I was actually just looking at that jar. This is one of the reasons, well, other than the fact that this stuff is really sticky and you need to make sure you're cleaning your rims really well, I do that just so that I can check for cracks or chips in the jar. And I actually found what looked like a little tiny crack in that jar. So I was just inspecting it a little bit more. And I ended up having to actually empty that jar because it was definitely a crack in it. And I did not want that to explode in my canner. So I ended up emptying it out into a clean jar. You're gonna put some lids on them and then fingertip tight rings and then put them into your water bath canner. Now you want to water bath can these for 25 minutes. It says that that is for either pints or quarts. It's 25 minutes across the board. So I'm showing you right there, that's the little crack that I found in it. And I wouldn't have not found that had I not been cleaning those tops off. So definitely you got to clean the tops off regardless because that is a super sticky thing that you're canning, but that is another reassurance why I do that. There, I'm just taking the air bubbles out because that's another thing with the apple pie filling. It really does create a lot of voids in it. So you want to make sure that you are definitely debubbling it. So we're going to get them all into the water bath canner. After 25 minutes, we're going to take the lid off of that water bath canner. I like to remove it right off of that element because I have a glass top element. Even if I turn that heat off, that element is still going to be hot. So I actually take my canner right off of the oven and just set it. I leave it for 5 minutes before I pull my jars out. You can see there I was actually just removing a little bit of the extra water in there. I wanted to make sure that the jars were covered at least with 1 inch of water, but I didn't want too much because I didn't want it to boil over. So there are my jars coming out. You can see that it is filled right to the 1 inch headspace there. I have the appropriate amount of headspace now after they are out of the canner because again, that clear gel and the apples just really swell up a lot. And you can see even some of them are over that 1 inch headspace. So definitely 1 inch headspace 1.5 inch headspace when doing this. So this is me just putting them into my pantry shelf. I am so excited because my pantry shelves are just getting so full. I love this time of year, just seeing my pantry just really, really full. I think I'm gonna end up filming probably in the next couple of weeks for you guys. I think I'm gonna end up filming a pantry tour and just showing you how much stuff stuff we were able to can up together this year. Also, I really like to have record of that because you will notice after we finish the pantry tour in February, you will see a substantial difference in how empty my pantry is, because we really eat out of this pantry for the whole winter. Like, this is why I do this. So it is now a couple of days later and we are going to finally get that sourdough started and cooked. Well, I really was craving bread, so I thought I'm going to get it out of the fridge and finally cook it. So I have my oven preheated at 450 degrees. I have my cast iron in there. That's the other thing that I can link for you guys. I do have a really in-depth detailed video showing you how I make my sourdough. Again, with the water kefir and the kombucha, I have so much improved my technique since I made that original video. My cast iron is in the oven just getting good and hot. I like to leave it in there for about 30 to 45 minutes just to get the steam kind of built up in that cast iron. I'm just scoring my bread just that way it can rise a lot better. And then we're gonna put it in the oven. What I do is I cook it for 30 minutes with the lid on. After 30 minutes, I come remove the lid and I put it in there, or leave it in there for another 25 minutes. After that 25 minutes is up, I come and take it completely out of the cast iron and just put it back in the parchment paper, and I just put it back in for an additional 10 more minutes. And then this is the dough when it comes out, or the bread when it comes out, and it is just so amazing. Now I leave it rest on my counter for at least an hour. Sometimes it's more difficult to do that, but it is ideal to leave it rest on the counter for at least an hour because it will continue to cook just sitting there on the counter. So you really don't want to slice into it because it will result in like a denser bread. I'm not sure why, but my camera was not focusing, but there is the bread coming out of the oven and it will sit on my counter and rest for at least an hour. Okay, it's been about a week since I filmed that day with you guys, and I'm finally now getting back to you to officially tell you bye. I am really horrible with filming these, and then I completely forgot to close the video out with you guys. So I also wanted to come back and let you know, because I noticed that when I was editing it, I never actually ended up including that clip of me making the salmon patties with you guys, but that will be included on this upcoming Saturday's kind of what we eat in a week video. That recipe turned out amazing. I had no clue that making salmon patties was that easy and that good. It's probably going to become one of our staple meals because it was just amazingly quick to make, which was really awesome. In the comments, if you could let me know which style of video you prefer. Do you prefer me making like one kind of lump video of just showing like one individual project? Do you like days of the life, like me just kind of taking the camera along with me on my daily tasks? Or do you like my meal of the week cooking? It is okay if you like more than one style video, because I personally love meals of the week video and I love watching what other people kind of do throughout their day. So if you want to let me know in the comments, that would be awesome, because then I can really kind of focus on the videos that you guys really like to see, and then I can get you out some stuff that you're going to enjoy. So thank you so much again for watching, and I hope you have a great day or night whenever you're watching this, and I will see you on the next video. Bye guys.